Hey guys, in this video we're going to go through GPT-4 and Bubble, and specifically how to overcome the current Bubble timeout when using GPT-4 or Stable Diffusions when those calls are quite long. I didn't expect so many people interested in it from the tweet that I posted, but due to that I am basically making this video. Alright, so the current issue that we have with Bubble is that when you're sending an API call to OpenAI GPT-4, the return, the time it takes to process the data in your prompt and to receive back the information is taking over a minute, 2 minutes, it depends. But it's taking longer than what the actual Bubble API can handle today. Bubble is actually working on a solution right now, so it will be solved. Now, I think this concept though still exists in anything related to AI. We're talking GPT-4, it's only sometimes 2 minutes. If you use Stable Diffusion or other AI platforms or models or APIs, sometimes, Stable Diffusion might take 5 minutes, 15 minutes. If you use a GPU cloud service, you might have to boot it first and it might take 15 minutes. And then from those 15 minutes, then it does the whole AI model on top of your data. So this concept works for GPT-4, but also any kind of call that is going to take you 15 minutes to generate. Now, this is how it works today, right? And the issue is here is over a minute or over the time that API builder has. The idea is instead of having a loop between just Bubble and OpenAI, we actually do something a little bit more advanced where we don't have the loop here, but we use a third party. How does that look like? Well, how it looks like is where we had before just the API builder and OpenAI, we add this little layer of abstraction on top. We send data to a third party. And on top of that, we send again the data from that third party to OpenAI. And the process here is still going to be over 1 minute. The difference is here that third party API tool, whatever, doesn't have a limit. So actually it will work. And then what happens is once that data is processed and works within that third party platform, you're sending back the data to Bubble via an API. So the way Bubble works is it's just sending data to an API, and then we're basically sending back to Bubble through the API, so it actually adds data. And that's basically what we're going to go through. I named this third-party API because it's kind of how it works, but the idea it's basically a third-party workflow automation tool. We're going to see a few different ways to do it, but the idea here is actually you do have what we call a webhook. And a webhook is basically an URL that expects some form of data and then receive that data and send it somewhere else or do something with it. We're going to see 3 different tools that can do that, but specifically this methodology, whether you're going to use things that already integrate with Bubble, that is basically the underlying technology with it, which is called a webhook. So one of the first platforms we're going to look at is Integromat or Make. And the idea, again, when we were looking earlier at this piece, right? We are here. So instead of having a webhook, we're going to build a webhook in Make. Okay. So how do I do this? I click on add and I'm going to search for webhook. Here's a webhook and I'm going to create a custom webhook. A custom webhook, I can just create a new one and say test Bubble GPT-4 save. What it created right there is an URL. This URL is kind of similar to an API. We just copy that, and that URL, whatever data we send to that URL will just be received by the platform. So we copy the address, and now we're going to go to our API connector in Bubble. We're going to create a new API call. I'm going to call this Mike Webhook. We're going to add here the actual webhook call, and we're going to send to this address that we had in Integromat. Now, one of the things is, what kind of things should we use here? but we're sending data, so it's a post that we're going to have to do. So from there, we have basically a webhook call. So here we have now the call. We're going to use this as an action because we want this to be part of the backend, like the workflows themselves. So it's going to be an action. The data type is JSON, yeah, that's fine. And then we're going to add a parameters. So we could do it as a raw call, but it's a bit more complex for most. So we're just going to do a parameter. And for example, this will be a message. And as a message, we remove the private. That means that it's available basically in dynamic data in your workflow. We don't want to allow for blank because they should always send data. Now in there, what we're going to do, we're going to add a message that we want to send. So for example, what is bubble? We can send more data as well. Now, what kind of data are interesting for us right now? So first the message, sure. But what we're going to want to send as well is the UUID. The UUID of our message, right? So we're just going to call it UUID. The reason for this is when you're going to send that data, we send data to the webhook. We send the data to GPT, it comes back, but then we send it back to Bubble. So to Bubble, to understand that the data, it sends data for message ABC. It receives here is going to send data back, right, to the API. But how does the API knows this is for a message ABC? So to be able to do that, it's going to have to also have the information message ABC. So now we see that we not only have the data from GPT, but we have also the value of the ABC, which correlates to the initial call. So we are able to send the data all back to the original. So here is why we have the UID, and we can just say 1, 2, 3. And we don't want it private because this will again be dynamic. We'll talk about data, etc. later on. So once we've done that, then we can initialize the call. So first, before we do this, we can see here it's waiting for some information in Integromat to initialize the call. So as we do this, we just initialize the call. There was an issue setting your call because it's just JSON. But in here it says successful determined. The reason is because we were sorting out the actual call from this webhook. So now let's say we actually try, say okay, there you go, and we say run once. So we're going to wait for the data and we're going to do this again, initialize the call. All right. And here we just have the data in the output of the Integromat. The message is what is bubble and the UID is 1, 2, 3. So this is actually working. Now, the issue we've had, right, by just sending this data as a JSON is because there's no return, right? We're only sending data, we're not responding back in Integromat with anything. So here, if we just change to text and we do again the initial of the call, boom, it's just been accepted and the data is still received here. Let me actually rerun this. Wait for the new data, rerun the initials, accepted, and it just received the data. Cool. So now we can see what we've just done is we've done this section here and this section here. So now we're going to do the call to the OpenAI via this platform. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can do the basically OpenAI. I think is one here, OpenAI basically already working. So if you're kind of not that advanced in their API, you can just do that, create a completion and just use your account in there, so API keys. Or you could also just decide, you know what, I'm going to make my own API call, HTTP, to the actual make a request, send a specify URL. And I'm going to make basically a call to the OpenAI API the same way that I would have done it in Bubble. So again, here, like I'd rather go a bit more advanced, so more in the details of like webhooks and HTTP, so you can see how that works versus using just the things of the tool, because then you can transform that information from this tool versus Zapier versus other platforms out there. Once we do that though, the advantage is, there you go. So you have the URL. So we want to use completion API. So that will be your API. You're posting the data to that API. Header, we're gonna have authorization. That will be your bearer. And then here, that will be your API key. Okay. Now we're gonna add the actual request content. So to do this, we can go to the API platform, to OpenAI information, and we go to create chat completion. So here are the parameters we want to send for GPT-4 completion. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in the request content. Here, changing it to GPT-4, role user content, and in the content here, I'm just going to say message. We're gonna keep it very simple, but this is kind of the idea here. Cool. And then, okay. Now if we run this module, we'll just say, what is bubble.io? And we just got static code 200, which means it worked. And the output has raw assistant, content, etc. And it's got the result here, bubble content. So now what we want to do again is we want to send back data to Bubble. So we can do an HTTP call. Again, this platform has actually also Bubble integrated with it. Now, I guess I could just use that, but I'm just going to use HTTP again just to show how it works. I'm going to make them a request and I'm going to post data to my API. So we've done this piece where we send the data and then we have the API call, we return the data to Webhook, and now we can actually do something with it, as in sending it back to a Bubble API. So here in the backend workflow, we can create a new API workflow. And the new API workflow name will be GPT-4, let's say. We want to expose the API. Public for now is fine. We want to keep it fairly simple. We're just going to do a manual definition. And we're going to do the data, so the output, and we're going to say also the UID. The reason of why we want this UID as well is because we want to send that data back from the initial message, okay? In the data that we're going to create around GPT-4 message, we want the actual output. Well, if we wanted the input, we can have the input. We can have the output, which is from GPT-4, and we already have the UID with this. So when we go into our workflow, let's say we have here input. Where is the input? We have our first input request to GPT-4, and then we have a little button, and button here, generate. As we click generate and we go here, we're going to say create a new thing. We're going to create a new thing, right? Which is going to be a new type. The new type will be GPT-4 message. We're going to have, let's just go to the data. We're going to have input, output, and that's it. Like, we're keeping it very simple here. So as I go back to my workflow, I'm going to say input equal value. That's it. That's all we're doing. And then from there, as you're creating this message, we're then sending the data to make webhook for GPT-4. And what are we sending? Well, we're sending the message. So now we're going to say result of step 1 input, and the UID will be result of step 1. So the result of step 1 is we created a new message. So we're going to go and say unique ID of the message that we just created. So now when we're going to send that, we're going to receive here all these informations. So wait for new data. Okay, close. this isn't done, let's just remove it for a minute and link, yep. And then we're gonna go run once, wait for new data. Okay, now we're waiting for new data. As I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna say, what is a fluffy generate? Now it's adding, and we're gonna look in the database. So you can see in the database app data, it just created what is a fluffy Phoenix. The output is empty, but we do have a unique ID. And if I go to the Integromat Webhook, I just retrieve what is a fluffy Phoenix and the unique ID initially. And it just sent it to GPT-4 with the output of the message. Fluffy Phoenix is a fantastical mythical bird, blah, blah, blah. Now we want to send the data back, right, to the API through a backend API workflow. Now we're going to send back to the backend workflow. I'm going to say output, right? And then UID, cool, perfect. So we should have everything, that should all work. And then in there, we're going to say, make changes to thing, and we're going to say, do a search for GPT-4 message, where the unique ID equal the UUID from the call. Okay? The parameter that we set up as UUID. So we're pre-selecting the message we want, and then we say first item. That's it. And then what do we change? Then we change the output. The output will be the output from the API workflow. That's basically it. So now we go to the HTTP call. We are going to send the data to Bubble, so to this backend workflow. So to have the URL of this, it's fairly easy. You just use the GPT-4. You go to your settings and API, and then you have the URL right there. And then at the end of this, you're just going to add GPT-4. So the name of workflow, API workflow name, GPT-4. Once you post the data, you have the body type. This is what you can do in different ways. I usually prefer to, again, just use the simplest a field. You have a field type text. So the key is output, and the result is choices, message, content, another item which will be text, and the value won't come for the previous one but from the initial webhook, which is a UUID. Cool. So if we rename this, that is Bubble API backend workflow. Post. Cool. Oh, see, I made a mistake here. That's UUID, so the key that we have in the workflow, and the actual value, which is this one. Okay, cool. Now we can run it once and wait for new data. We're gonna refresh this and say, what is a fluffy Phoenix? So the Webhook received the request. It's now using GPT-4 to make that request. So apparently it says message must authenticate to call this method. The reason for this is because I forgot one thing, which was to, in my API workflow, say this workflow can be run without authentication. That's it. Go back. I'm gonna just run once, wait for new data, generate again. This should work this time. All right, that's it, success. Now we're going to go to the data itself. Now let's look at the data. Boom. The output has been updated directly in the database. So we went from here to sending back the data, and we're able to select because we said this message was ABC, and here's the output. And that's basically the concept of it all for everything. Now, if we think about, oh yeah, but I don't want to use Make, you can use any platform with these methods. So for example, you could use it with Zapier, where in here you can just say, okay, create a Zap, and it starts with a webhook. And the craziest thing when we do this, right, is that retrieve, catch a hook. But this is, again, what we use with Integromat or Make. Now it's just a different URL. So all you got to do is copy this now, go into Bubble, change that hook in the API to change from Webhook call to Zapier now. You just literally change the URL. That's it. And you reinitialize the call. Success. Test the trigger. There you go. And it just received the response we just sent. So that's the request A. And then where is the data in here? Oh, there you go. Message, what is Bubble? The raw body. And then you can continue with that. You can use that. You can. So basically this technique, you can use it with any, there's also this platform Integrately, which is even cheaper than most of these platforms. And then you literally, again, they also have a webhook API again. So you would do 2 calls and that's fine. Yeah, go. Because the way of working is a little bit different. Go. But basically it's to show that you can do it with anything. And here as well, you will have a webhook. So this is now the new webhook that you can have. You just have to copy this, go back to your Bubble app again, paste this, and then reinitialize. So let's wait for, oh damn, lost it. There you go. Cool. Okay, now we're going to test. We're going to call it, reinitialize the call. Check your verifying. All right, I just got it as well. See test record, what is Bubble, UID, done. This is one of the reasons I tend to use Webhook instead of basically platform that already have. So for example, in Zapier, I can basically change that and I can actually start directly as well with Bubble. And here say, I think Bubble, yeah. And it's like listen to events, right? New workflow triggered event. And then it's very similar to what we've done. It's just like separate ways of doing it. You can do it with this. You can also in Integromat change from, instead of starting with the webhook, you could start with Bubble. And then you could say, listen, watch events. But the underlying technology behind that is literally a webhook. As it says here is like a webhook from Bubble. So it's just going to help you a little bit differently to approach it, but it's literally the same approach. So in general, I tend to say to people, just use webhooks, because as you've seen, I can just copy paste that URL here and just change whether it's Zapier I'm using or a different platform, and your entire flow in Bubble hasn't changed, right? You still have a webhook you're sending data to, and you still have your backend workflow that is receiving specific information. So you can shift between 20 different tools, whether it's Zapier, Integromat, Make, or Integrately, or NAN, which is also an open source one. And all these things basically just would work in the same way through webhooks. I think that's it. I think that's basically it on creating this. And again, we talked about specifically GPT-4, but you can imagine that this call could also be 3 different GPT-4 calls recursively after each other. You could do GPT-4 and Stable Diffusion on top and go back to Bubble. There was really no limit. I think when Bubble is going to like add specific like extra time, I'm not sure how long they're going to allow, right? They might allow maybe like 5 minutes, 3 minutes. The question is, when you use AI, you might need more than just 1 minute or 2 or 3 minutes. It might be 15 minutes. So I do see a world where this anyway won't really go that much away, even if the timeout is a bit expanded.